The Young and the Restless spoilers. Los Angeles had seen its share of scandals, but the city hadn't trembled like this in years. Under the golden haze of late evening, headlines screamed across every entertainment site and digital feed. A theft valued at $500,000 had stunned the upper tiers of its nightlife. Jewelry, cash, and designer items vanished from a private suite belonging to an international investor, and security footage captured only chaos, faces obscured, the sound of glass shattering, and the desperate noise of a woman screaming before everything went dark. Within hours, the whispers began, and one name rose like a spark through gasoline: Audra. Once the charismatic, sleek professional who had built her image on confidence and control, she was now being dragged into a story that would consume her reputation and expose the fractures she'd fought so hard to hide. When police stormed a nightclub in downtown LA, an exclusive venue dripping in neon and arrogance, Audra was found at the center of a brawl. Her dress was torn, her hair tangled, her hands trembling as she tried to push away a group of women shouting accusations. Cameras caught the flash of her confusion, the disbelief in her eyes as she tried to speak over the sirens and the shouts of thief that cut through the bass-heavy music. Moments later, the handcuffs clicked, and she was led away before anyone could truly understand what had happened. The crowd didn't need proof. They had a story. And in LA, stories spread faster than truth ever could. In the cold light of the police station, the glamour of her world dissolved. The fingerprints, the questions, the suspicion in every officer's tone, it was all suffocating. She tried to explain that she wasn't part of the fight, that she had come to meet someone who promised her a job opportunity, that she'd been caught in the wrong place at the worst time. But the detectives already had something she didn't expect, a security image showing a woman in a black sequined dress leaving the scene of the theft carrying a silver bag identical to one she owned. The resemblance was undeniable, and when they told her the bag had been found in her car, containing traces of stolen items, the world tilted. She could barely breathe. Someone had planted it, she was sure of it. But who? The police didn't care about her protests. To them, every denial sounded like another lie. When they asked if she'd been struggling financially, her silence betrayed her. Yes, money had been tight. Work in LA was scarce, her rent overdue, her life teetering between image and survival. But theft? Never. She'd made mistakes, but she wasn't desperate enough to steal. Not yet. As she sat in the holding cell, surrounded by the buzz of other detainees and the hum of fluorescent lights, memories flooded back like poison. The move to LA had been meant as a new beginning. She'd left behind the scandals of Genoa City. The rumors, the broken relationships, the professional setbacks, and promised herself she'd rise again in a city that thrived on reinvention. Yet somewhere between ambition and exhaustion, something in her cracked. The parties, the late nights, the crowd that promised success but demanded submission, it all blurred into one endless performance. She remembered the first time she'd met the man who brought her into that club, charming, well-dressed, speaking softly of investment deals and influence. He said he admired her intelligence, her hunger, her potential to command a room. Now she wondered if he'd ever meant a word of it. Because as the details unfolded, his name was conspicuously absent from every police record. The same man who had invited her there was suddenly unreachable. His phone disconnected, his social media wiped clean, his existence conveniently erased the moment her world exploded. The media wasted no time crafting its version of events. Fallen executive, one headline called her. From boardroom to jail cell, another jeered. Photos of her past life resurfaced, smiling at corporate events, wearing designer gowns, standing beside powerful men. They used her ambition as a weapon against her, painting her as a woman who wanted too much and fell too far. In a city built on illusion, the fall of a once polished figure made for irresistible entertainment. Every comment thread dissected her motives. Maybe she had debts, maybe she'd been dumped, maybe this was revenge against someone richer. The truth didn't matter anymore. The narrative had already chosen its villain. But Audra wasn't ready to surrender. When her lawyer finally arrived, a weary man with sharp eyes and little patience, he told her the case was already messy. The evidence chain was weak, some surveillance footage was missing crucial seconds. Someone had clearly edited or deleted portions of the video. The stolen money hadn't been recovered in full, and no witness had directly seen her take anything. Yet the planted bag was damning. He warned her that without solid proof of manipulation, she'd be fighting an uphill battle. Still, Audra refused to break. She started piecing together the fragments of that night, the faces she saw, the music that drowned out voices, the flashes of a camera near the VIP section. One woman in a red dress had bumped into her twice. One man at the bar kept staring at her but disappeared when the commotion began. Every detail itched at her mind, forming a web of suspicion she couldn't yet untangle. Days turned into a blur of interrogations, tabloid leaks, and isolation. Friends who once texted daily now avoided her. Potential employers withdrew offers. Even those who had admired her confidence whispered behind closed doors that maybe she'd always been trouble. She began to question herself. Had her hunger for success blinded her to the dangers around her? Maybe she had trusted the wrong people, crossed the wrong line. In the mirror of her cell, she saw not the ambitious woman she used to be but a stranger caught in someone else's nightmare. Yet beneath the despair, a fire still burned. She knew someone had set her up, and she would find out who. When she was released on bail, the city outside felt colder, sharper, unrecognizable. Paparazzi waited like vultures, shouting questions about the stolen money, about drugs, about whether she had turned criminal. She didn't answer. She walked through them like a ghost, heading to a friend's apartment where she could think in silence. That night, she opened her laptop and searched for any trace of the man who'd invited her to that party. Nothing. It was as if he'd never existed, no LinkedIn profile, no photographs, no digital footprint except for one transaction, an email confirmation from a dummy company that rented the suite where the theft occurred. The account was registered under a false name. But when she looked deeper, tracing the metadata through an old contact of hers, a chilling realization dawned: the account had ties to someone from Genoa City. Someone who knew her well enough to predict every move she'd make. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Someone from her past had orchestrated this, using her own weaknesses against her. Maybe it was an old rival seeking revenge, maybe an ex-lover with a grudge, maybe even someone still tied to Newman Media, wanting to bury her once and for all. Every possibility gnawed at her sanity. If she was being hunted, then clearing her name wasn't just about justice, it was survival. She couldn't trust the police, they already saw her as guilty. She couldn't trust the press, they wanted blood. So she decided to investigate herself. Quietly. Methodically. If LA was a jungle of lies, she'd learn to hunt like a predator. She started visiting the people who had been at the party, one by one. A DJ who remembered her face but not her actions. A bartender who said he saw someone matching her description running out but later admitted he'd been bribed to say so. A security guard who confessed that the camera in the hallway had been disabled 10 minutes before the theft. Every clue led deeper into a network of manipulation that stretched far beyond one night. There were money transfers between shell companies, falsified receipts, and anonymous tips conveniently timed to paint her as guilty. By the time she pieced it together, she realized this wasn't about money, it was about control. Someone wanted to ruin her reputation so completely that she'd never rise again. And yet, the deeper she went, the more dangerous it became. Anonymous calls began to follow her. A black car parked outside her building for 3 nights straight. Her email was hacked. The same police who had arrested her began questioning why she was digging into the case herself. Even her lawyer told her to stop, too many powerful people didn't want this story reopened. But Audra had nothing left to lose. She had already been destroyed in the court of public opinion, all that remained was the truth. The woman who once sought status now sought vengeance. Her transformation was complete. In the final week before her trial, new evidence surfaced, leaked by an anonymous source. A short clip from the security system, showing not Audra, but another woman of similar build carrying the stolen bag out of the room. The lighting was poor, the face hidden, but the outline was distinct. The press erupted again. Some said it vindicated her, others claimed it was a fake video meant to confuse the jury. Audra stayed silent, letting the noise burn itself out. She knew who had leaked it, and she knew it was a warning. Whoever had framed her was still watching, still in control, and still one step ahead. When she finally walked into court, her posture was unbroken. The cameras flashed like gunfire, but she didn't flinch. Somewhere between fear and fury, she had found something steadier, clarity. Whether she won or lost, she would expose whoever had turned her life into a spectacle. She would not vanish quietly into the margins of LA gossip. And as the doors closed behind her, the question that haunted everyone watching lingered in the air like smoke. Was Audra an innocent woman destroyed by envy and deceit, or had she simply learned too well how to play the same ruthless game as those who framed her? Because in Los Angeles, guilt and glamour were never that far apart. The flashing red and blue lights outside the Los Angeles precinct reflected in Kyle's wide eyes as he stood frozen beside Holden, unable to process what he had just seen. The image of Audra being shoved into the back of a police car played again and again in his mind, each replay sharper, crueler, more unreal. The woman they had known, the composed, commanding, impossible to intimidate Audra, had looked small and defeated, her wrists bound, her hair falling in disarray around her face. Holden's voice cracked first, breaking the suffocating silence. They said she was arrested for theft, he whispered, the words tasting wrong even as he spoke them. $500,000 stolen from an LA investor, and Audra was now the prime suspect. It didn't make sense. She had her flaws, her arrogance, her dangerous charm, but she was not a thief. Not Audra. Not the woman who once held entire boardrooms captive with her sharpness and fire. Yet the world they knew was collapsing into fragments of rumor and accusation, and neither man could find their footing in it. Inside the holding cell, Audra sat still, breathing through the chaos that had consumed her life. The scent of sweat, metal, and fear clung to the air. She knew Kyle and Holden were probably outside somewhere, desperate for answers, but she couldn't bear the thought of facing them, not like this. When the officer asked if she wanted to make a call, she didn't hesitate. "I want a lawyer," she said firmly. Her voice, though strained, carried the old authority she once used to command boardrooms. "I don't want to lose myself in this madness." The officer wrote it down, indifferent, and left her alone with her thoughts. Was she really capable of this? That was the question echoing through every corner of the city. The media loved her, until now. Now they wanted to see her burn. Audra, the woman who could outtalk executives and outsmart rivals, was being torn apart in headlines, called the nightclub thief, corporate queen turned criminal. Yet, even as the world decided her guilt, her mind kept circling the same question: who had done this to her? The evidence was too perfect, the setup too clean. Someone had known exactly how to strike, how to twist every part of her past and turn it against her. Kyle couldn't sleep. The memory of Audra's arrest gnawed at him, the image of her fighting against the police replaying behind his eyes. He wanted to believe her innocence, needed to, but doubt crept in like a disease. There had been moments when Audra was secretive, when her phone calls grew shorter, her explanations vaguer. And then there was Claire. That name alone made everything more complicated. Claire had always despised Audra. Their rivalry had started long before LA, rooted in jealousy, betrayal, and ambition. Claire had once accused Audra of stealing a promotion from her, and the two had circled each other ever since like predators waiting for weakness. If anyone had motive to destroy her, it was Claire. But would she go this far? Holden, ever the realist, began digging into the facts. The footage the police had didn't show much, just a woman with Audra's build, wearing a sequined black dress, leaving the scene. The stolen items had been found in a silver bag identical to one Audra owned. Two identical. He remembered seeing Claire with the same designer model weeks earlier at a gala. The thought hit him like ice water. Could Claire have planted the evidence? Could this have been a move in a long game of revenge? He needed proof, and he needed it fast. Meanwhile, inside her cell, Audra was replaying every encounter with Claire like a detective searching for fingerprints in memory. The sly remarks, the polite smiles that never reached her eyes, the times Claire had hinted that she knew what Audra was hiding. At the time, Audra had dismissed it as professional envy. Now she wasn't so sure. Claire had power, connections that reached deep into the corporate and political underworld of Los Angeles. And Audra, despite her sharpness, had underestimated her. The next morning, when Audra was brought to the courthouse for her bail hearing, the city's hunger for scandal was on full display. Reporters shouted questions as she walked past the flashing cameras, her lawyer shielding her with a briefcase and a grim expression. Kyle and Holden stood at the back, watching helplessly. When she caught their eyes for a fleeting second, something in her gaze shattered them. It wasn't guilt, it was pain, betrayal, disbelief. She was fighting for her life, and they could do nothing but watch. Outside the courthouse, whispers spread like wildfire. Some said Audra had been caught trying to sell the stolen jewelry. Others claimed she'd confessed. Lies mutated with every retelling. Claire, always immaculate and controlled, was suddenly more visible in social circles, offering sympathy to mutual acquaintances, claiming she hoped Audra got the help she needed. It was calculated perfection. Claire was painting herself as the voice of reason while feeding the inferno behind closed doors. Kyle finally confronted her, unable to stand the charade. He asked her outright if she had anything to do with Audra's downfall. She smiled, a soft, practiced smile that sent chills down his spine, and told him he was too emotional to see things clearly. People show their true colors under pressure, she said. Maybe Audra just showed hers. But her eyes betrayed a flicker of something else, satisfaction, or perhaps fear that he was getting too close. Holden, however, didn't rely on words. He went digging where it mattered. Through old emails, security records, digital transactions. What he found was enough to break open the story. A payment made from a shell company linked to Claire's private account, money transferred the night before the theft to the same man who had invited Audra to that ill-fated nightclub event. The setup was almost perfect, except for that one overlooked trace. When Holden shared it with Kyle, the two realized what they were facing. This wasn't just professional rivalry, it was personal destruction. Claire had orchestrated everything, using Audra's vulnerabilities, her reputation, and her desperation against her. But exposing Claire wouldn't be simple. She had influence, allies, and a flawless public image. Any accusation without airtight proof would be dismissed as emotional bias. And Audra, still under scrutiny, couldn't afford another scandal. In the days that followed, Audra's determination hardened into something darker. She told her lawyer she wanted to fight, not just for freedom, but for truth. Her calm exterior masked a storm of resolve. I didn't steal anything, she told him, but someone stole everything from me. The lawyer warned her that trials weren't about truth, they were about perception. But Audra knew that better than anyone. She had lived in a world built on image and manipulation. Now she would use those same weapons to turn the game around. As the trial date approached, Claire's mask began to crack. The media attention grew, and small inconsistencies in her story surfaced. Holden leaked a copy of the payment record anonymously to a journalist, and whispers began to shift. What if Audra was framed, became the new headline. The narrative was changing. For the first time, the city hesitated. Maybe Audra wasn't the villain after all. Maybe she was the prey. The night before the hearing, Kyle found himself standing outside Audra's apartment. The lights were off, but he knew she was awake. Inside, Audra sat by the window, staring at the city that had turned her life upside down. Her reflection in the glass looked almost like a stranger, stronger, colder, unbreakable. Somewhere deep down, she knew that even if she cleared her name, nothing would ever be the same. The woman she had been, the one who trusted, who believed in fairness, was gone. What remained was someone who understood how darkness moved through power, how betrayal smiled before it struck. When the morning came, and she walked into the courtroom, every eye turned toward her. Kyle and Holden stood behind her this time, silent but steadfast. Claire sat across the room, poised and perfect, but her confidence wavered when Audra's lawyer began presenting the timeline of transactions and digital records. The tension was electric, the air thick with unspoken fear. For the first time, Claire looked like the one cornered. By the time the day ended, the truth had not yet fully emerged, but the tide had turned. Audra was no longer the criminal in the public eye. She was the question mark, the mystery. Innocent or guilty, she had reclaimed her narrative. And in a city built on illusions, that was the most dangerous kind of power. Because if Audra had truly been framed, then the game wasn't over. It was just beginning. And if she hadn't, if somewhere beneath all the betrayal there lingered a shadow of truth to the accusations, then Los Angeles was about to learn that Audra could be just as ruthless as those who tried to destroy her.